transforming ourselves from being a traditional ERP to a service provider, an e-commerce platform should be more around customer service and less around taking orders. If I could free a distributor's customer service rep from mundane tasks, did this product ship? Can I have a copy of my invoice? What's my AR look like? Do you have this product available? What it's cost? All those things I just told you, they can be found on the website. Let them self-service. And that frees that CSR up for revenue generating activity. What is it that you want to get out of that website? What's going to be the impact to the customer? What's the revenue opportunity it's going to generate for your business? You have to be able to execute against it. How are you going to market it? How are you going to promote it? How are you going to drive business towards it?
Generating sales or new orders, but it's about customer service. There are very few distributors who do this really well, but a lot of them struggle with that. Do you agree with that assessment?
I agree with it, and I agree with it on twofold. They lack content. They lack an ability to financially invest. Taking what you do today, automating it, and then repurposing you for some other function that's critical to the business that right now AI is not solving for. Specifically, utilizing AI and freeing up employee time. I would argue that in any distributorship, 65% of a customer service rep's time is non-revenue generating. And I'm being conservative. Things like AI, things like e-commerce, things like mobile computing frees distributors up from getting away from the non-revenue generating activity and focus on revenue generating activity. That's the goal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Driven by DC Cap podcast. I'm your host, Karthik Chidambaram, CEO of DC Cap. We make systems talk to each other for distributors. We are here at Nashville, Tennessee, the city of music. And we have with us Frank Heenan, a Global VP of Distribution and LBM, Lumber and Building Materials at Epicor Software. Frank is a veteran, industry leader, thought leader in distribution, spent his entire career in distribution. It's an honor to be talking to Frank today. Frank, welcome to Driven by DC Cap, and great chatting with you, and looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Frank, you spent your entire career in distribution. Now, you spent over 25 years. You started with Profit 21 right out of college. You've seen the ins and outs, ups and downs of distribution. And today you are the Group Vice President of Distribution and LBM at Epicor. I'm just curious, what does a Group Vice President do? It's a big title. And what do you do at Epicor?
I hang out all day on ESPN. So my responsibility is primarily on the revenue side. So I have revenue responsibilities for the two divisions of Epicor. And then I have dotted line responsibilities for everything else when it comes to developing the platforms, professional services, supporting the platforms. Ultimately, the business is looking upon me to drive those two business units for Epicor.
Very nice. And so you primarily work with customers, your teams and distributors, everyone.
Yeah. So if you look at the supply chain between the manufacturer, distributor, and retailer, my focus is 100% on the distribution. And within distribution, there's many different sub-verticals within that, all durable goods. So my first responsibility is the sort of the tip of the spear, which is to get the non-Epicor distributors to become an Epicor distributor, as well as working with existing customers that may be on our legacy solutions and moving them to the go forwards, as well as our existing customers on the go forwards and selling them products and services. And then really when the fun begins, which is when the new client comes on board, the teams that are implementing them, riding shotgun along those processes with certain accounts. And then when it gets to the end game and they're launched, and then they go within our support channels, that's also areas where I get involved in. And then as it relates to cloud, because we're transforming ourselves from being a traditional ERP to a service provider, that whole experience or that whole journey just continues to evolve and is a bit different.
I was watching some of your interviews in terms of how distribution works and your role in distribution. And you talk a lot about strategy being a core for a distributor, and not just strategy, but also execution. Can you share an example of where a distributor uses strategy really well and has some really big gains because of it?
Yeah, I'll give you three areas. I think a lot of the focus, I'll use an analogy. There was this movie out there called The Field of Dreams. And in the movie, Kevin Costner is playing this part in the middle of this cornfield. And he says, if you build it, they will come. And I translate that to e-commerce. A lot of distribution businesses have this idea that if they build a website, business will come. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. So that's where you need to have a strategy. And when I say a strategy in that area is, what is it that you're looking to automate? What's the message that you want to share with your employees? Because think about it from an employee's perspective. A lot of employees might sit there and look at the website as being a competitor, like it potentially could take away from their job. And as we all know, when you're in distribution, the job's more of a people-driven job where you have to be able to answer a lot of the questions that they may have about a particular product. That's the value add a distributor's employee brings. So when it comes to e-commerce, I think you got to lay out your strategy. Well, what is it that you want? And in my opinion, an e-commerce platform should be more around customer service and less around taking orders. Yeah, you want to take orders, don't get me wrong, but if I could free a distributor's customer service rep up from mundane tasks, did this product shipped? Can I have a copy of my invoice? What's my AR look like? Do you have this product available? What it's cost? All those things I just told you, they can be found on the website. Let them self-service. And that frees that CSR up for revenue generating activity. So the dynamic of introducing automation through e-commerce, strategically, you need to think through what is it that you want to get out of that website? What's going to be the impact to the customer? And what's the revenue opportunity it's going to generate for your business? And then the final pillar of that is when you define that strategy, then you have to be able to execute against it. How are you going to market it? How are you going to promote it? How are you going to drive business towards it? That's one example.
But what do you think? A lot of distributors struggle with that, right? So really well said in terms of, hey, e-commerce is not just about generating sales or new orders, but it's about customer service. There are very few distributors who do this really well, but a lot of them struggle with that. Do you agree with that assessment?
I agree with it, and I agree with it on twofold. One, they lack content. So content sometimes can be a major challenge. Two, they lack an ability to financially invest. Like they see what Grainger has to offer. They see what MSC has to offer. They see this competitor, this little company out there called Amazon, and they want all that capability, but they don't realize the investment those organizations are making is significant. So that's where we come in. We have to be able to offer the capabilities of an Amazon, of a Grainger from an e-commerce experience, but at a budget line that most people can understand and consume. All that being said, poor choice of words, but you get what you pay for to an extent, right? So you really need to make sure you have a strategy. And then from within that strategy, you have the content to support it and you have the financial means to grow it. Because in anything, you have to make investments in order for the technology to work for you. And I'd also add, a lot of it is you get out of it what you put into it. Like if there isn't commitment from the organization of driving to whatever success factors you've put in place from a strategy standpoint, it will fail. If the organization has built a strategy, built an execution plan, and has commitment from the top down and from the bottom up, you'll be successful. So they're simple things, but that's my opinion.
Simple things make a big difference. And you also talked about content and the lack of content. So what do you think distributors can do for content, right? So because that's a problem a lot of distributors have. But what do you think distributors can do? How can they stay ahead of the game? Yeah.
I think some of the ways they stay ahead of the game is exercising and looking at available third parties and the content they provide, strengthening relationships with major manufacturing lines that are out there. And when I say strengthening relationships, it's not about not only do I want to carry your product, but I want to form a partnership that's mutually beneficial. In order for us to do that, you could help me with content, right? So I think it's a variety of different avenues. And then I think the last thing is you have a workforce, hopefully at your disposal, that can assist you in generating and driving that.
Yeah, workforce, invest on that, invest on workforce focused on content. I was watching one of your interviews where you said, hey, a lot of distributors, right? You have sales reps, men and women, they're at customer locations, and you really need to enable them, to see the data, right? So ERP being more of an actionable platform, the orders the customer has placed or the inventory, the open invoices.
I got a lot of comments here.
So yeah, you talked about that, that's actually very interesting. But what do you think some of the challenges are there, in terms of implementing that fully, and where does Epicor stand in that regard?
I actually think it's a couple of things. So when we're at home in a non-professional setting, there's all these great technology platforms, Facebook, Instagram. My kids talked about this other one. I don't even remember the name of it at this point. But my point is you have these easy to consume, easy to use through whatever methods you're comfortable with in a day-to-day personal environment. And then we switch that to the business environment, and I have these enormous monolithic ERPs with all this different capabilities, and it's just overwhelming. So from my standpoint, it's when it comes to mobile computing, when it comes to AI, when it comes to, arming your sales team with information that is easy to consume and easy to digest and prepares them for whatever that next call is going to be. So you're out on the road, you're about to check in on one of your accounts. You don't have a means of which to let me fire up my laptop, let me VPN in. Like, you don't have a means of doing that. You need to be able to consume the information through a mobile device, because everybody has these things, and seeing information about the account. Do I have open quotes out there? Are there orders that are stuck? What's their price card that might be in? Do we have promos being pushed out? All that information should be shared with the sales team. That's easy to digest, easy to consume, and then share it with the client without ever having to go into the ERP. Epicore's vision is you're not necessarily ever having to go into the ERP, but the ERP is that foundation point that's feeding you information to make business decisions or execute in trying to sell client something.
Where does Epicore stand in this regard, right? So let's say I'm buying Epicore software, I'm a distributor. Am I able to do that right now?
Yeah, it's a journey. There's certain aspects of everything I described. Absolutely. You can do that all right now. Mobile computing, e-commerce platforms, BI, business intelligence, AI, artificial intelligence. And the key to that is we've developed use cases that are applicable to a distributor. And what I mean by that is a lot of times AI is permeating throughout the world, right? You and I both know this. We say certain keywords and then all of a sudden in our feed, things just start happening because devices are listening, right? But what use case is that solving for a distributorship? So Epicore's goal is not to build technology for technology's sake. We are building technology to solve business challenges for a distributor. And those technologies could come in the form of AI, can come in the form of a variety of other things, as long as it has one key simple fact, and that is I am solving a business case that a distributor faces today, or more importantly, I'm solving a business case that a distributor doesn't see today, but it's going to affect them in the future. And that future either could be short-term or long-term.
Talking about AI, we are at the Epicore Insights conference. We had a great keynote. Vaibhav Vora, the chief technology officer at Epicore, he also demonstrated, like you said, the practical use of AI at a distributorship or at a manufacturing unit on how they practically use AI. It's just not a fancy term, but how you use it. How do you see AI being evolved in distribution? What are some practical uses of AI are you seeing at distribution?
So my view of AI in distribution is a little different than most. I think the first thing is developing a strategy that you're not scaring your employee. There are certain employees within distributorships that can view AI as something that can take their job. And that's the furthest thing from the truth, because it's not that it's going to take what you're doing today and automate it and thus eliminating you. No, it's taking what you do today, automating it, and then repurposing you for some other function that's critical to the business that right now AI is not solving for. Practical business examples could be, distributors throughout the world. There was this fancy technology term that was supposed to be widely adopted called EDI. And to this date, and I've been in this space a long time, and I'm used to have hair, now I don't. It's still not seamless. It's still not perfect. In most distributorships, whether you're an electrical house, plumbing house, fluid power house, tile house, they're getting emails. And they're getting emails all the time from contractors looking for product, either buying it or quoting it. And process today comes into their email box. They take it, they might print it out, go into the ERP, key it, get the quote, email it back, what have you. There's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of error that can occur. Well, AI can solve that. If I receive an email from a customer, that's asking you for a quote for a certain product, AI should be able to render, read, and write into the business system the quote.
Do you see distributors using this effectively today, or how far along are they on the game?
There are, I'm not going to say thousands, but there are a number of examples of distributors in our customer base that are doing what I just said, specifically utilizing AI and freeing up employee time. It goes back to my comment earlier. I would argue that in any distributorship, 65% of a customer service rep's time is non-revenue generating. And I'm being conservative. Things like AI, things like e-commerce, things like mobile computing frees distributors up from getting away from the non-revenue generating activity and focus on revenue generating activity. That's the goal. The goal is not to eliminate jobs. The goal is to free time up in mundane tasks, to automate those tasks, to free the employee up to go out and generate revenue for the distributorship.
Today, we also heard Steve Murphy, CEO of Epicos, talk about how ERP is evolving, not just from a system of record, but a system of action. And you have been in distribution for over 25 years. How has ERP evolved in distribution today?
Oh, wow. How's it evolve? ERP, the first I would say is in the beginning set from a technology perspective, companies like Epicor, we didn't view ourselves as an ERP 25 years ago. We viewed ourselves as a partner. And we viewed ourselves of focusing pretty siloed into distribution. And where it's evolved from being, to Steve's point, a system of record. It's evolved into a partnership. And what I mean by that is that we need to continue to develop capability. I've used these words previously, but that's easy to consume. Take Apple as an example. Why does everybody love Apple? Because it's easy. I actually have done this. I can give an iPhone to my 90-year-old mother-in-law and she can use it pretty straight away. If I'd sat my 90-year-old mother-in-law into an ERP system, I can almost assure you she can't use it. So where this evolution comes into play is it's simplicity of function, ease of use, and abilities for people to digest capability. They're very simple thoughts, but at its core, within Epicor, it's developing capabilities that are meeting those pillars and allowing, regardless of age, people to consume the ERP, not let the ERP consume you. 25 years ago, those statements couldn't be said. Fast forward to today, you were getting to the point where you could be utilizing product that you're talking to the ERP. You're just not in the ERP. That's the goal.
So you get these systems integrated and they work with the ERP and you get the output on the front end.
Yeah. Our goal at Epicor for our clients are just give you the ability to perform your job. How we solve for it, that's our problem. You benefit by us developing capability that allows you to perform your job in a seamless fashion.
But why do some ERP projects fail?
I think that ERP projects that fail, they fail on a variety of fronts. The first and most important is a lot of organizations look at an ERP project as an IT project, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. I can't tell you how many companies I work with that in every presentation, IT is involved, and post-implementation, it's someone from within IT that's driving that. And that's a problematic. ERP projects should be driven by the business. ERP projects, they need to inform the end users of the why. Why are we doing this? What benefit are we looking to gain from it? Because the end user, all they care about is they just want to do their job, right? So projects that are not driven by the business, projects that are not communicated as to the why, have a high degree of failure rate. If you adhere to those practices, you commit to it from the top down, there is no turning back. We're doing this. Those projects typically end up successful. Is it a bumpy road sometimes going through it? Yeah. I'll give you another analogy. If you went to your heart surgeon and your heart surgeon said, 98% of the time I'm successful, how would you feel? Right? Not real good. So that's where whatever ERP partner you partner with, you want to partner with an organization that has done this many, many, many times. They know what it takes to bring you through the process. Because at the end of the day, for better or worse, an ERP is like your heart. It's the heart of your business. And when you remove that heart, you better hope you're with a surgeon that's more than successful just 98% of the time, because you don't want to be the 2%.
So it's about the partnership, like you rightly said, right? So it's not just about the partnership with the technology vendor, but also your implementation partner and more. But how do you think, distributor technology vendor relationship, how do you see that evolving? And and you guys actually do a lot of work in that regard. I was also watching the keynotes today where you guys talk about, hey, you partner with the customer and you co-innovate together. And that's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that and how's the partnership evolving?
Yeah. So a lot of that is, we look for companies that are thirsting for feedback. They're thirsting for partnership. They don't look at this as something that I just bought this thing and that's it, and I'm never going to deal with the provider again. And the poor choice of words I use there is provider. We are your partner, right? So If we see a business challenge in a certain said market and we want to form a partnership with maybe 4 or 5 companies in that said vertical to attack a particular challenge, and we are going to go down that path and co-develop it, that's what we want. Because what we don't want, what nobody wants, you don't want a developer, a business analyst, sitting in a cube somewhere, coming up with this great thing they think, and then ta-da, here it is, and it's nothing what I need. So some of that has to do with your development process. So we subscribe to an agile process where we involve the client and we involve the team. And when I say the team, developer, business analyst, quality assurance, customer, and we go through iteratively, jointly through the development process. So that way, when we get to the end, it's done, and you were a part of it the entire way. Whereas the old waterfall method, we would go into our cube, we'd write a set of stereo instructions, we'd give it to the developer, who would code it, who would give it to the quality assurance person, who would test it, who would give it to the document, who would document it, who then would say this is ready for general release, and that could be 15 months down the road. Well, the world could have changed in 15 months. So when you get out at the end of that process, it's like, ta-da, and you're like, yep. And software development is a highly, highly capital intensive business. So that process I just described, we have invested millions in that. And when we're off the mark, we got to go back through and invest even more millions. So companies like Epicor, we can afford that because of our financial strength. But a lot of smaller ERPs, they cannot. So 25 years ago, when I started in this industry, from an ERP perspective, there was probably like 30 to 35. Today, it's a fraction of that.
I was attending a customer success training, and where they talked about, hey, when you onboard a customer, it's good that you go live ASAP. You don't take that long cycle. So it's important to go live soon so that everybody is happy, and that's something you relate to.
Yeah, I mean, from a go live standpoint, it's a couple of factors. I mentioned the first, why? Why are you doing it? And it's having that 2 to 3 minute elevator pitch that you cascade throughout the organization as to the why. Human beings, by trait, if they understand the why, they'll then determine whether or not, yep, I'm on board, or nope, I'm not. The second is make it fun. And here's what I mean by that. Everybody focuses on the go live. I'm going to give you another analogy. Think of a war. And when you're in a war, the wars can be long, they can be treacherous, they can be very time consuming, just not a great thing. But in any one war, there's always these little battles. And I view your implementation as the go live date, that's the war. There are certain battles in the war that you need to celebrate because then you're building momentum. If you just focus on the go live date and the date pushes or moves, then the end user starts to going, this is never going to happen. This is never going to happen. And they start losing confidence. The projects start losing steam. But if you celebrate each victory in the battles, you're building momentum that people are seeing the end, and the end is the go live. And then they then celebrate the go live because you won the war. So that's typically how I articulate to folks when it comes to this thing. And like I said, make it fun. We're not putting people on the moon. It's not brain surgery. We are implementing ERPs.
Enjoy what you do. Yeah. You talked about why. There's this good book called Start With Why, Simon Sinek. That's a great book to read as well for the audience out there.
I've learned quite a bit by asking a lot of questions. And the question I always come down to is why? Why do you do that? Why is that important? Why should we be going down this path? When you start asking yourself that and you answer those questions honestly, you'd be shocked where you can go.
Yeah, not just on ERP projects, but even on anything you do, right? Why am I doing it?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So you talked about feedback, and you also talk about voice of customer being a key part of your strategy. And you guys also onboarded Rich Moore. I saw Lisa Pope interview him on stage, Chief Customer Officer. Yeah, but what if a customer is really, really mad at you? And that does happen sometimes as a vendor. We have seen that happen. Yep. How do you deal with that situation, or how do you diffuse it?
So let's talk about that for a minute, right? So take support. No one calls in a support happy. Right? I don't know how you are in your personal life, but if I'm having a challenge and I'm calling a support line, I'm not in a good place. So are we perfect? Absolutely not. Do we have challenges within our install base? We do. It comes to listening to what the client's saying. And when I say listening, I don't mean like jotting little notes down. I mean actively listening to what they're telling you, getting at root cause, and then being very direct as to whether or not the root cause we can correct or the root cause we can't. And if you actively listen to what a client tells you, you determine root cause, you address root cause, you'll take somebody that comes into a situation like this to where they relax themselves and then they then start wanting to collaborate and work together. And the last thing I would say to it is, I don't know how you are. I don't like my time being wasted. You can't solve something, tell me, and then give me alternatives to solve it. You know, a colleague of mine once told me, people come to me with problems all the time. I love to hear sometimes if you came to me with a problem, what's your idea on the solution? Then I can effectively work and manage that. So yeah, you're always, look, you don't have install bases as large as we do with not having challenges. That's a fact. Anybody that tells you their ERPs can solve everything you need, they're lying. They can't. We can't. It's making sure we're listening, actively listening, and then solving for whatever that root cause problem is.
You've had a long career at Epicor. You've been with them for a long time, right? Except for like a few years.
Yeah.
So what's something special about Epicor, right? I mean, I see a lot of people at Epicor, they've been there for a long time. What's special about Epicor?
You're the first person ever asked me that. I'll tell you why I love it. I came from a blue collar family, and this was an industry that reminded me of it. People here work real hard and we work real smart, and it's very, very rewarding. Everything about it's been rewarding. So for that, that's why I'm here. I thought at one point the grass was greener. The grass is brown everywhere. And as much as we think we may, are there days where I wake up going, look, yeah, but those days are few and far between. So for me, I love distribution. It reminded me of when I was a kid, and I stuck to it like a gum on the back of your shoe. So that's why I love it here. And there's a lot of my colleagues that can say the same thing. There's a number of us that this is our first job out of school. So there's something to be said about that, right? Meaning I'm not complacent. If I was complacent, I'm not. I'm constantly challenged. I love the people I work with, love them. And the customers are great.
Frank, you've had a very impressive career, right? So you just started out of college, got hired by P21, and today you're the group VP at Epicor. It's a very impressive career. Not everybody gets there, right? So for instance, there are some challenges, obstacles, and all that. What do you think has made you successful? What advice would you give others out there, who are looking to kind of climb up the career chain?
Yeah. So first thing is, you would never hear me say, when I was an individual contributor as a solution engineer, I would never say that's not my job. Never. If there's a problem in front of me, I'm going to go solve it. Come hell or high water. Second is work hard. I work. But the third is work smart. And then I would tell you other things for me. This is just me. Be highly communicative, expect the best, and execute. But you need to be highly communicative. Like you need to, when I started, I'll give you a funny story. So I started in 98. I was a 23-year-old kid out of school. And my first job was to call the 3 customers that bought Profit 21, the product, and ask them, what do they think? And I remember coming home to my wife. I was married at a young age. I remember coming home to my wife saying, I think I made the biggest mistake of my life, because I got screamed at for hours. And 25 years later, I don't think I made a mistake. My point to that story is that I always wanted more. And I was given an opportunity to take over products at a very young age. And I remember sitting in a conference room and a guy asked me, what's your management philosophy? And I was like, I don't know. We're going to find out. But my point to it was is if you enjoy what you do, you enjoy the customer base, you enjoy your coworkers, you're having fun, but you're also performing and delivering, you'll have a very successful career here. And you have to be at an employer that's willing to give you opportunity. Here's another thing, that's willing to take a chance. I don't know many software companies in the world that would come up to a 25-year-old kid and say, you have a P&L for all the product lines we have at 25. So
yeah, work hard, don't be complacent, expand boundaries.
Always learn. I learn all the time. I learn every day. I learned in this conversation with you certain things. Be very observant. I'm extremely observant. You may not think I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you. And learn. Every person in the world can teach somebody something. And sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes it's very grandiose. Oh, and the last thing, I'm highly analytical. I don't run the businesses based off of what you tell me. I run the businesses by triangulating and consuming data.
So data is the new oil. And, everybody makes mistakes. Can you talk about one grave mistake you did and something you learned from?
Oh, I make mistakes every day. Yeah, I would say a few mistakes. A couple of mistakes I've made. One mistake I made was leaving this organization. That was a mistake. What I learned from it, grass is brown everywhere. And what I also learned for it is, for all the warts I thought our organization had at the time, what I saw out in the world was a lot worse. So I learned from that and I came back. Second thing I learned is I learned how to work in true enterprise class companies, meaning I was working in a sector where the average contract value was north of $5 million a year on average. These are big deals in big companies. And there's a term in our industry saying, I learned how to hunt whales. So when I came back, I taught the business how to hunt whales. And since that time, over the last 7 years, we've been able to execute to that, where our ability to go up market and win has been close to 95%. And that's a pretty good run rate.
Frank, on this podcast, we interview a lot of leaders, and one question we ask them, one of the ending questions we ask them is, what question would you like to ask the next guest we interview? So the previous guest we interviewed was Derek Murdoch, the CEO of IPS Packaging. I think they're also an Epicor customer. The question they wanted to ask, and I think you're the right person to answer this question, there's a generational shift happening in the workforce, and a lot of people leave jobs, right? Like 2 years, 3 years. They just want to go for the next big thing. How can you keep the workforce motivated, or how can you retain them? So that's a question Derek had for the next guest.
Great question. I struggle with that. I think you need, as the workforce turns over and the kids are coming out of school, what motivates them is much different than what motivated you and I many, many, many years ago. So I think the first key question of any of those employees is determining what motivates them. And depending upon what motivates them, you stick them in career paths to appease that motivation. If you do not, that's when you start seeing a lot of job hopping. Second thing, it's challenging them, but not challenging them from a aggressive standpoint, challenging them to where they don't get complacent. Like, take these phones, right? Take the way we consume data now. Take the way these kids consume data. Your kids, my kids. It's got to be quick. They need constant great job, great job, great job. They consume stuff faster than we ever did. They're watching 5-second videos, and then you sit them down into a 5-hour conference call. They're gone. So it's challenging them and motivating them and providing them data at a speed in which they're used to consume. It's a difficult task, but I think if we want to maintain a workforce and having people wanting to build careers at places, that's my opinion, ways in which you can accomplish it.
Yeah, challenge them with new opportunities, right? So as a manager, hey, you can do it. It doesn't matter, like you said, even if you're a 25-year-old, they gave you a P&L to run, and that motivated you to.
Yeah, I mean, it scared me too. But did I ever expect that this would be basically my only job? Nope, I did not. But I will tell you this: when I do see resumes, when they do come across my desk, and I do see your 2 here, 1 there, 3 here, 2 there, 1 there, those are ones that I'm challenged when I start talking to them, because, to me, generationally, you went to go work for a company, you went to go work for that company. As long as that company was, motivating you and do what you need, pretty much stay there. As long as you have an ability to move up, out, if you're happy in what you're doing, you're happy in what you're doing. I always wanted to work for a place that would push me.
I was interviewing Anne Vranicic, the president of Wayland Corporation.
Yeah.
And she said the same thing. Hey, 2 years here, 2 years there, it doesn't work. Things don't happen that fast, and, it's hard to accomplish a lot in that short span.
And think about this too. I work for a software company, right? I am not the norm. Others are not the norm. I say that speaks loudly for the software company I work for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So-
That's it. Yeah. So it's your turn right now, Frank, to ask a question. What question would you like to ask the next guest we interview?
What's the one thing you would want to get out of your technology partner? Doesn't matter what it is. And I don't even know who the next person that's going to ask with. So if it's one of my colleagues, what's the one challenge you feel is really disruptive for a distributor? If it's a non-technology person, what's the one thing your technology provider could give you that could potentially be a disruptor in a positive way?
I would like to end with this question, Frank. How do you keep yourself updated? What are you reading right now? Or how do you stay ahead of the game?
Yeah, so I will admit I am not an avid reader, but I'm an avid I do a lot of reading on the internet. A lot of rags, mags, tech talks. I consume that stuff. I like to get out in front of distributors a lot, see how they're doing, what they're doing, observe, may not say much. You'll never see me with a notebook. Actually, I think that's quite important. When I come into a meeting, I am actively listening and I am observing. I'm not writing anything down. I'm writing it down, but I'm writing it down in my mind. And then afterwards, when I come back, that's when you start doing things. So for me, it's consuming information, triangulating information. So what you say is the same thing he says, the same thing I say, and then go from there. So I don't do a lot of reading, like books and stuff. Here's the other thing, what I really like to do. I am a sports junkie. So I am a sports junkie. I kid. There's three things that are important in my life, and the rest is noise. My family, my job, and sports. Outside of that, I really don't pay much attention.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Frank, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining Driven by DC Cap. Great to see you in Nashville. I'm glad we got some time to talk to each other. And thank you so much for joining Driven by DC Cap.
As am I. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks
Thank you.
for joining us on this episode of the Driven Podcast. Check out our other episodes for more and subscribe to be the first to access every new episode.